So before the vaccine, reported measles cases didn't reflect how much measles was in the country. I already talked about that. Even the Centers for Disease Control, this is on their website today, says that 4 million annual cases of measles must have occurred in order for their blood surveys showing that 95% plus immunity, which means that most measles cases in America were so mild that they never got reported. Only 1/8 got reported. Today, we have a situation where adolescents and adults are the biggest group who get measles because their vaccine immunity is 23.2 times lower than those induced by natural infection. And there's your reference for that. Which includes maternal immunity, so that by 1991, babies were 3 times more vulnerable than they were before the vaccines. The attack rate today could be even higher. Dr. Papania, who quoted that in his paper, only looked at naturally immune mothers in the post-vaccine era, and he underestimated what the protection rate would have been pre-vaccine, as I just showed you on that curve, that it's very different. So he was looking pretty much in that middle section. Dr. Peter Orby has pointed out the same trend in Africa, where by 2003, and they were vaccinating heavily by 2003 in Africa, he said measles was infecting young adults and would infect pregnant women with the worst forms of measles. And he said what makes the situation worse is that in the early days of the vaccine's use, immunity was regularly boosted by still circulating wild measles virus, which artificially inflated the efficacy of the vaccine. By stopping the virus circulating, the presumed protection of the vaccine is no longer as high as they once thought it was. So in other words, in the beginning, when there was still circulating virus and they were vaccinating, it looked like the things were going pretty well, because at that point, you had all those people in society who were naturally immune for life, and you had vaccinated people who were freshly vaccinated, and you had them getting boosted by natural viruses circulating. And then that's changed. Of course, now we're having those people who are naturally immune are dying off, and we have the stoppage of the amount of circulation that we used to have, and we have vaccines wearing off as well. This fact has been carefully analyzed several times by medical researchers who predict that because of shaky vaccine immunity, our future might be somewhat spotty. The analyses of these authors predicted that in 20 to 30 years' time, herd immunity will be so fragile that should measles come through again, we'll be worse off than we would have been had they not introduced the vaccine. Levy said that by 2050, the number of susceptibles will be higher than pre-vaccine times. He discussed his predictions based on a one-dose vaccine model, which was the model at the time that he wrote the paper. And this is just kind of the details of how he worked out his figures. So what about today's two-dose model? Well, Dr. Heffernan did an analysis, and he didn't really think all that much of that. He said that the dynamic consequences of the interaction between vaccination, waning immunity, and boosting are far more striking. For high levels of vaccination, greater than 80%, and moderate levels of waning immunity, greater than 30 years, large-scale epidemic cycles can be induced. And that's pretty much us. And his prediction was that a long disease-free period could be followed by a far larger epidemic than predicted, starting about 52 years after the vaccination programs began. Considering that vaccination only really got underway with an effective vaccine in 1980, as this writer described, counting 52 years from there, the year 2032 is a good estimated guess of when more surges of measles cases will become obvious, at least in America. Another medical article put it this way: that 20 years after 2 doses of vaccine had been given, 33 to 44% of those recipients would become susceptible to measles again. The old pre-vaccine community immunity of 95 to 99% for life is out the window. What we see here, this is the main analysis, and these are what are called confidence intervals, meaning kind of the range of where we could end up. So what we have over here are the I have to come over here and look at this. Potentially susceptible people, okay? And this is based on blood testing, on antibody testing, actually. And this is how many years after people were vaccinated. So you can see over here, if we go to 20 years out and just go to the middle, we're looking at approximately 33% of people being susceptible when we look at the middle line. But if we look at the other line, we're up to about 44%. And you can see that over time, a certain percentage of the population, after 15 years, you're still having about 12 or 13% of people that were vaccinated with 2 doses not having immunity. We know that, and the experts know this. For this reason, their answer will be more of the same, which is to give extra vaccines earlier to babies, again to pre-pregnant women, more to us adults who were vaccinated as children, and to make vaccines mandatory by law for everyone from cradle to grave. They are also researching newer vaccines that maybe can be inhaled and given earlier